All right, hello folks. Welcome to Call and Response. It's a virtual office hours experience and a new resource for the One License community. My name is Brenna Cronin, and I have the pleasure of serving as general manager of this global enterprise. So if we've never spoken before, very nice to meet you and very happy to have you here with us today. My great hope is that through these monthly calls, you'll be able to be better connected to your own team, as well as to our team. The other benefit of doing a call like this is that you can feel a great connection to your peers. So it looks like we've got about 10 folks that are on the call so far, and I'm sure that that number will increase. So we're very, very happy to have all of you here. The other benefit of this kind of process is that our screen sharing platform allows for me to answer your questions in a more comprehensive and demonstrative way. So being a global company, many of our users can't call us on the phone. So in this 45-minute open web-based call, we aim to answer as many of your questions as possible to deepen your learning and to inspire new ways to utilize our platform to inspire congregational song. So a few housekeeping notes. The calls will naturally be different each time we meet, since the people on the call and the questions asked will be different. I'm going to do my best to get to each and every one of your questions, but depending on the number of people that end up joining us today, that may prove difficult. So that's part of the reason why we offer this call and response event on a monthly basis and in 2 different time zones. Typically what we're finding, so it's the morning here in Chicago, it's 10 a.m. We typically find that in the morning we're talking to North America and to Europe. And then in the evening, so we have a call at 7 p.m. Chicago time this evening, we're talking to North America and also to Australia and New Zealand. So that's part of the reason why we're offering these 2 different time zones, so as many people can benefit from these calls as possible. If I'm not able to get to your question today, you are welcome to email us at info@onelicense.net anytime. Some of you are probably very familiar with our ticketing system. Info@onelicense.net, and we're happy to answer your questions, typically within 24 business hours. I'll ask that if you are not actively participating in the conversation that you mute your microphone to help with the sound quality. So all of you have been given privileges to talk, which means that you can choose to mute and unmute as you'd like. So all of you have those privileges. It's not required. You can certainly, listen to the call the entire time. You don't have to engage in the dialogue, but I do certainly want to encourage all of you, as this is a bit more conversational in nature, as opposed to just a regular old webinar, that you participate in that way. One last note, since the webinar is being recorded, should you need to ask an account-related question, it's entirely possible that demographic information such as your address, phone number, email address, etc., could be visible through our screen sharing, so just keep that in mind. So now I'll turn the attention to you. I'll invite you to introduce yourselves. There's 2 ways that you can do that. You can either raise a hand. There's a functionality in Zoom where you can do that, and I'll do my best to kind of call on each of you. Or what may be even better is that there's a chat functionality, and I encourage all of you to type your thoughts in there. For those of you who are calling in on a telephone and you don't see the chat, I will do my best to kind of highlight some of the big points and the big questions that are coming out of the chat, so that way you have a little bit more context. But go ahead, get to typing in the chat. I would love to hear a little bit more about all of you, what your role is, what your location is, how I can help you specifically today. If you're really just joining just to talk with everyone, that's fine too, or to get some new ideas, that's great. But I kind of want to get an idea for the next 40 minutes or so of how we should structure our time. So go ahead and either, again, type into the chat, share a little bit about your role, your location, how we can help today, or go ahead and raise a hand, and I'll be able to call on you and you can talk with us. Oh, lovely. Nice to meet you, John. I've got some family on the east side of the state of Michigan. Happy to have you. Welcome, Hector. Happy to have you as well. Mark, good morning. Indiana. Okay, so we've got the Midwest represented so far. Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan. Wonderful. Allison in Ontario. Very happy to have you, Allison. Good morning, Matt. Nice to see you. Minnesota represented. You're right. We've got a nice, it's not even Midwest at this point. It's Great Lakes. This is great. Yorkville, Illinois, right down the road. Hi, Christopher. Good morning. Magali from Maryland. Happy to have you. June, good morning. So far, everybody in either the Central or the Eastern time zone. All right, Cassie, I see your hand. So Cassie, I'm gonna go ahead and unmute yourself if you're able to. Happy to have you introduce yourself and ask any questions you've got today. Good morning. Oh, Sandra, you are right down the road, Oak Lawn, Illinois. That's great. Sandra's new to One License, and she's looking forward to hearing what it's all about. That's great. Sandra, I'll get you started on a link. That way you have it. Let me get my screen sharing going here for everybody. All right, so I'm going to introduce you, Sandra, to our blog, news.onelicense.net. So just yesterday, I posted the new user webinar that we had last week. So if you go to news.onelicense.net, the 2020 new user webinar, you can click on it right here. In the first quarter of every year, we do a new webinar. Super, super helpful if you're just getting yourself kind of started with this whole world, whether you are new to the position or the responsibilities are new to you. I know that there is always high turnover in ministry. There's reshuffling and all those things that happen. So if any of you missed this webinar, or you're looking for some more general basic information, overview of the company, the process of reporting, downloading, and all that jazz, you can go ahead and log into news.onelicense.net, and then you can view this new user webinar. It's about an hour long, so definitely be mindful of that. And let me see if I can even put the link into the chat, and then that way you all have it. So Sandra, if we don't give you kind of the overview information that you're looking for today, that you can definitely take advantage of that webinar as well. All right, very good. What other questions do we have so far today, or specific needs that we can answer? I did have 2 questions come in through our Zendesk ticketing system, so I'm going to get to those first, so that way you all have a few minutes to kind of type your questions into the chat, or to raise your hands if you want to use your microphone. So I'm going to jump over to Zendesk here. Zendesk is our ticketing system, and that's how we answer all of our emails. So Allison's question, she said that I regularly have to report hymns that are not in your database. When I try to manually enter it, I can't, because the publisher is not listed, and that is a required field. So how do I report these hymns? This is a really great question, and this all comes down to who the copyright holder of this specific song is. So you want to take a look at the resource that you're looking at. If that's a hymnal, there should be copyright information that's at the bottom of it. If it's another supplemental resource, any professionally published resource is going to have copyright information somewhere, whether that's at the bottom of the page or some of the, I know hymnals from GIA have in the very, very back of the book, there's like an acknowledgements section. So that's going to give more specific information on like name and address, maybe a phone number or an email for how to get in touch with those companies. So kind of a little bit of a general answer here is that when publishers are looking to make a hymnal resource, they're looking to pull from all kinds of different sources. So when permissions are given for a hymnal resource, those permissions don't always automatically transfer digitally. So they don't automatically, just because, let's say Gather Comprehensive is on our service, that doesn't mean that everything inside of Gather Comprehensive is covered. So you want to take a look at, from our homepage, visit the Member Publishers tab. So let me go to our general website here. The Member Publishers tab is going to give you the most robust list. We're always updating this because we always have folks that are joining us. We have 80,000 songs in our catalog and about 300 different publishing entities that we work with. So for example, here, if we wanted to filter by publisher, so say you found a song that you really liked and it was covered by the Iona community. You can search Iona. If you don't already have that information, the Wild Goose Resource Group. They're covered by GIA in North America, and then they are their own entity outside of North America. If you were to search for, I know this won't come up, the Brenna Cronin Publishing Company, because it doesn't exist, you would see that that is not covered, right? So it's a really great way for you to use the member publisher page first, Allison, to see if the publisher is even a part of our service. And then if you're going to manually submit something, if the publisher is not listed there, then we don't work with them. So that's why we don't allow you to submit manual submissions for publishers that we don't work with. Those manual submissions all go to the publishers directly for them to review. So they all have different timelines that they do that on. I know some of the larger companies, WLP, OCP, GIA, they have dedicated staff members that work in royalties and permissions, and they are a little bit more active from a reporting perspective with all of those and getting back to you on those. But typically, as a general rule, if the copyright holder is a publisher, member publisher with our service, then the title is covered. So perhaps a little bit of a longer answer than you were hoping for, but I hope that there was a little bit more information in there that maybe would have answered someone else's question as well. So Allison, if there's any other nuanced things about that you want to know more about, you can either reply to this email and we'll see that message right here. Or if you want to type into the chat, I'm happy to help. You're welcome, Allison. Very happy to help. I'll remind folks, if you're just joining us, it looks like our number is up to 17. If you want to introduce yourselves in the chat or ask any questions, so that way I can get an idea of where our energy needs to be shared today, I'm happy to do so. I do have one other Zendesk ticket that I will jump over to here, and then I'll give those of you who are looking to use your beautiful voices today to chat more specifically vocally with us. You can do that too. So let me pull up this ticket here. So this question comes to us from John. Hello, John. Thanks for typing this in so that way we can get to it. Here are John's general questions. Do you send invoices by regular mail? We do. We always will send them via email first, just in an effort to be green. And you'll also notice that when you're logging on to report your usage, you can see your invoice available there, obviously, if it's time for your renewal and that's been generated. That's a check and balance that we do. I'll be very transparent about that. If you're logging in and reporting your usage, you'll see that you have an invoice that's due. It's really important to us that you're logging in. I understand if it's not weekly, if monthly works better for you, that's fine too. But at the very, very least, it should be quarterly because the system lets you report 12 weeks in the past and 6 weeks into the future. So again, 12 past, 6 future. So it's kind of a rolling quarterly section of when you can submit your reports. And it's really important to stay on top of those for a number of different reasons. The payouts matter for our composers and our publishers who, as I know you know, are real people, real flesh and blood people who we support with that. But also, when you're staying on top of your reporting, it helps you to remember what week you used things in a specific year. So if you want to reference, hey, we're getting ready for Ash Wednesday. What did we do for Ash Wednesday last year? You can pull it up more specifically. So yes, John, we send invoices by regular mail only after they're not paid first via email. And then you'll receive the one copy by regular mail, and then any additional copies after that would have interest charges because they weren't initially paid. The second comment is we have 3 users in addition to me. Do they create their own passwords or do they use mine? They create their own passwords. So each user has their own individual email address and they have their own password. It won't affect yours. So it's just like logging into Amazon or to Google or to any other website. It works the same way. Can they report usage in addition to me? They absolutely can. So you'll be able to see when you click on a specific week what's been submitted. So that way you can be mindful of that. I know that there are plenty of organizations who, the music style is different for like an evening teen mass or things like that. So they have different folks that are reporting different things. I totally get it. Does the number of services include daily services? Yeah, so what John is talking about here, and let me log in so that way you all can see this, but the default number of services is the number that you can set when you are looking to essentially multiply your reports. So if you go to my account and then my profile, and then you go to default settings, the number of services here on the right-hand side. So my number is listed as 3. This is a dummy account. It's an administrator account, but I'll give you an example here. If you have a service at 4:30 on Saturday, 9 a.m. on Sunday, 11 a.m. on Sunday, and then a teen mass at 5 o'clock on Sunday. Okay, so you have technically 4 services. If the evening service never has the same music, if they're always doing things that are different, things that are more contemporary, and the 4:30, the 9, and the 11 are almost identical, if not relatively the same, you're using the same mass settings, the same psalm, and all that jazz, have your services here be 3, because then what's going to happen is when you go and report something, you'll see the number 3 automatically pop up for you, and you won't have to do the work of reporting it 3 different times. It'll just know intuitively that since you have 3 services that are similar, you can probably use the same psalm at each of those services. Now, every time you're reporting something, obviously you can edit that, right? I'll give you an opportunity to kind of see that here. So if I was to go and report Marty Haugen's All Are Welcome, that's the one that I'm thinking of. It should be 5th. It is. So when I go and report that, because my default here is 3, it already populated it for me. So there's no need for me to report it 1, 2, 3 times, right? It comes up as 3 automatically. And I can edit that down. So say we used All Are Welcome only for 1 service. We only used it for the teen mass, right? You can edit that to say 1 service. So a couple of different ways to answer that question there. And then the last question here, how do I report for multiple weeks? This is my biggest concern. We have pew cards with mass settings that we use for months at a time following the liturgical calendar. I'd like to report each mass setting just once for the number of weeks that we use them. For example, we have been using the Mass of Renewal since the start of Advent and will continue with it until Lent. How can I report this for these 13 weeks just once without having to click on each week and then click on each individual piece and wait for the computer to respond? John, that is a fantastic question, and that is the whole reason why we created the duplicate button. So first of all, I'll show folks in case they're not familiar. I think you said the Mass of Renewal. So if you didn't, I'm just going to pull that one up anyway. So here we have the Mass of Renewal. There's 2 of them. So I'm just going to use this one as an example. This is from Good for the Soul Music. Let's say we've gone through and we're going to use the Gloria, and we're going to use the Alleluia, and we're going to use the Prayers of the Faithful, the Holy Holy, the Memorial Acclamation, and the Amen, and the Lamb of God, right? So say we just went all in on the Mass of Renewal. This is what we're doing. Again, this is Good for the Soul's version, just so we have something. You can report all selected, okay? I'm going to make this really current so that way we can see it very specifically. So I'm going to put it into next week here, February 20th through the 26th. Now I want to send and view my report. So here I've indicated that we're going to use all 7 of these titles. We're going to do it on an average of 3 services each week. I'm going to send and view my report. So now, John, this is the crux of what we're getting to with your question right here. So if we go back to my account and report usage, scroll down to this week. So here's the 7 titles that we just reported, right? Here's the magic button. We're going to duplicate it, and we're going to bring it into the next week. Copy songs. And now for the week of February 27th, you'll see that they're all there. So you can duplicate all 7 of these, have them go all the way down, right? I would do the mass setting first, and then if you're using a different psalm for each week, then add the psalm after, right? But that's a little bit of a hack for how you can, I totally get it. You don't want to have to go through the effort of reporting 7 songs times all of these different weeks individually. I totally get it. So that can be a really great hack for you to duplicate the questions throughout the rest of the weeks. So thank you, John, for those questions. I really appreciate it. I see that we have one up on the Q&A, so I'm going to answer that one. I'm not sure if you can see it on my screen. And then once we answer that one, I'll encourage all of you, get back on that chat. We've got about 25 minutes or so left together, or raise your hand, and I'm happy to you know, call on you, and you can use your voice. I certainly don't need to be the only one talking the whole time. But this person's question is, I'm relatively a new user and I missed the new user webinar. We use a program for the assembly, and sometimes Space allows to reprint the lyrics of the song, and other times only the title and the copyright info is listed. Should we report both, whether full lyrics are reprinted on the program or not? This is a fantastic question, and I'm sure that many of you know the answer to this. So I would encourage you to jump in for some conversation. But I get it. There are plenty of times where either it's a paper resource, it's a time resource, whatever the constraint is, and it also could be the file, right? The 2-page TIFF file is just not going to fit in your worship aid, and it exists in a hymnal, so why not just tell people what the number is, right? I totally get it. You are only required to report what you reprint. So if you were to create a really beautiful funeral program, and it's really lovely, and it has the individual's face on it, and it has their name, and it has you know, beautiful wording for who the gift bearers are, and you know, mentions of nieces and nephews and all of these things, right? If then just on one of the pages you want to indicate this is the name of the song and this is the page in the hymnal, that's entirely fine. And there's no need for you to report that. So you only report when you are reprinting lyrics, or when you are reprinting music, or when you are reprinting both. Okay, so if you're just indicating the song number, there's no need to report it. Same thing if it's up on like one of those boards, those wooden boards with the sliding numbers, right? No need to report that. The only time you report is when you're actually reprinting lyrics and music. Fantastic question, so thank you for that. So I am going to indicate that that was answered, and that one has gone away. So now I'll open it back all up to you. Those were the 2 questions that I received via email, and then also the one that I got in the Q&A. So either if you want to raise your hand, or if you want to type into the chat, I'm happy to answer other questions for you. Don't be shy, my friends. I know somebody's got something. Matt Hines, I'm going to call on you if nobody else answers a question. Anita says, a question from the UK. Oh, hello. Good afternoon to you, Anita. Does the Calamus license cover Decani music publications? Great question. We're going to go back over to our homepage. We're going to check out the member publishers tab. We're going to type in the word Decani. I know the answer. I just wanted to tell you how to find the answer. And they're listed there. Decani is included. So very, very happy to have them. Oh, you're welcome. That was an easy one. Very happy to have them. I believe they joined us July of last year when all of the transition with the Calamus licenses came over. So yeah, great folks over at Decani. Nicholas Blackford, you've probably been emailing. Good, I'm so glad you're happy. You've probably been emailing with him. We kept him on as part of their team. And that's really, I mean, we're a global company. We've got somebody everywhere who's able to help folks. So thanks for asking your question, Anita. What other questions are out there? Thanks, Matt. What about re-engraving music in a worship aid to fit space constraints? That is a fantastic question. I also know that people ask this question when they want the font to match. So if we come back to that funeral booklet, for example, if you're pulling songs from WLP and GIA and OCP, their fonts are going to be different, right? Because they're different companies. Well, technically World Library and GIA are no longer different companies, but you know what I mean. So the fonts can all be different, and they will be different. I mean, each company uses a different font. And by different font, I mean, let me see if I can find a good example while I'm sharing this answer here. The short answer is yes, you are more than welcome to re-engrave the music if Sibelius or Finale or another program is something that you are familiar with, or you have the, you know, the means and understanding and all that jazz. So I'm just thinking of Shepherd Me, Oh God. I must be in a Marty headspace today. So Ritual Song is a GIA resource. So these are intentionally blurry JPEG images, and this is to make sure that folks aren't screenshotting music off of the website. So we want to give you enough information so you can see what the file looks like without hopefully it being stolen off of the website. So yeah, their font is going to look one way. And then I just wanted to see if there are any other resources that are not GIA that are on here, and it doesn't look like it. But here could be, let me see if this is a different one. I want to give you guys a good example of this, of how the fonts are different. Oh, Breaking Bread. Okay, so you see how the font looks different, right? So that's all I was trying to say. It doesn't have to be the same song. So OCP, you know, maybe theirs is a little bolder, or like the actual font that they're using is different, right? So what Matt is basically asking is if, you know, are you allowed to re-engrave the music so that way it's all in the same style and the same font that you want it to be? And the answer to that is absolutely yes, especially when it becomes a space constraint issue. I also get it if we had the beatification of Father Solanus Casey at Ford Field in Detroit. We helped with their license. They had, I think, 40,000 people there. There are plenty of folks that create their own worship aids for everything, and that includes re-engraving their own music. So yes, absolutely 100%. We have another question. I've been delinquent in reporting. Oh, John, I'm so glad the duplicate button works for you. That is great. And I'm glad that you tested that while we were on the call. Thanks, John. Great question. Another question. I've been delinquent in reporting for a number of months. I will get to it soon. Can I report songs on different weeks when the proper week is no longer visible? The answer to that is yes. There's no other option with that, because those weeks are already paid out. So I'm going back to my account and then report usage, because I just want to show this example. So today is February 19th. You can go 12 weeks in the past. So you can go as far back as November 21st. So if you have songs from September that you're looking to report, I would just encourage you to put them into that first available week. That way you can catch up as fast as you can. Again, the benefit of reporting consistently for your weeks is that so that way you can reference what you did in a previous year. So you can view your past reports by clicking on this button here at the bottom, and you can scroll back and say, okay, what did we use for Ash Wednesday last year, right? Like, you know, and you can pull up and reference, you know, this is what we did for the first weekend in Lent, right? So it's important to stay on top of your reporting, not only from a royalty perspective, but also for your own planning. That can be immensely helpful. So catch up on it as soon as you're able. I would encourage you to maybe make a day going forward in your calendar that you know that you catch up. So maybe the last Thursday of the month is a particularly slow day for you. So sit down with a big cup of coffee and just knock them all out on the last Thursday of the month. You know, I get it that if the music is staying the same for an entire season and you've already done it all, then planning ahead is a great option for you, right? So here we are. Next week is Ash Wednesday. Again, Ash Wednesday and Marty Haugen are on the brain today, apparently, guys. But you can report all of the weeks into the future, so that way your planning can get ahead. Same thing if you're going on vacation, right? One of you just asked, what even is vacation? And I totally get that. But if you have the opportunity and the privilege to go on a vacation, that you can report into the future, okay? So happy to have you all do that. Happy to have you catch up as soon as you're able. And that is my best advice on that. All right, next question. Again, from a new user. Our director sometimes prepares an electronic binder for choir members that has scores and/or lead sheets for all selections used in a particular liturgy. Choir members then have the ability to use tablets during the liturgy to use these e-binders, so these electronic binders. I recall reading somewhere in your reference materials that your license does not cover materials for choir members, correct? Problems about using this type of e-binder? So that is a fantastic question. I know that I have complimented many of your questions, but this one is really good, especially as we go into an age of wanting to be green, not wanting to waste paper. The e-binder thing, I totally get it. Our parish uses a Dropbox link, so that way you can, pull everything that you need to off of there. I get it. So here is my best answer on that. If it is a choral octavo or a lead sheet, or an instrumental photocopy from like a instrument book. If it is the full accompaniment score of a piece of music, that is not covered under our service. So one license is intended for congregational use only. So it's really important that music for cantors, choirs, instrumentalists, accompanists, etc., be procured specifically through the publisher or through a different music sheet website type of a thing. So the answer as a general rule that you've probably seen, because you said I recall reading somewhere in your materials that it does not cover, that is correct in 99% of cases. You're not going to find Olegelos Ubi Caritas up on our website, nor are you allowed to reprint it through our license. However, if we're going back to our All Are Welcome example, a song that does not have parts to it, or at least parts that aren't traditionally sung, if all the choir is using is this, up on my screen, if all the choir is using is the melody line, that's okay. So the choir is an extension of the congregation. Any other Sunday, they're going to be in the pews, right? So whether they're sitting in the pews or whether they're sitting in the choir loft, it doesn't matter to me where they're sitting. They're still a part of the congregation. So if they're using just the melody line, then that is permitted through our license. So what that would be then for the director is they would be reporting the usage of the song. They would be downloading it from the website. They would be putting it up on that e-binder. They would be indicating that with their little licensing line down here, that they used it with permission, right? So that way, if anybody ever had a specific question, there wouldn't be any nerves about how the information was procured, right? So again, is Olegelos Ubi Caritas going to be on our website? No. Is it going to be covered by our website? No. Is the melody line to All Are Welcome going to be covered for the choir? Yes. So I hope that answers the question. All right, Hector's question. We print the music for our school choir on weekdays. The rest of the assembly uses the hymnal. Do I need to report that music that we print for our choir? Oh, good. I'm glad I'm already answering the question in a way, Hector. But you're right. Anything that you reprint, you're required to report. So for example, if the kids are just using, again, the melody line for All Are Welcome, and you have, 30 kids that are singing it, right? Or maybe that's a dream. Maybe you have 10 kids. I don't know. I don't want to assume you still report the usage of it because you're making a copy, right? Like you're reprinting the music. So whether that's a digital download, whether that's pulling it out of your hymnal, whether that was like Matt's question earlier with engraving it yourself, right? However you get it is fine. Download it from hymnary.org, right? It's all good. Whatever way you want to get it is fine. But you do have to report it through our service. You do not report the use of the assembly using the hymnal, because you essentially have full permissions for the hymnal because you paid a pretty penny for it up front. So, all right, folks, who else has a question? I'm happy to answer it for you. You're welcome, Hector. I'm glad that helped. All right, hello, Peter. So Peter, it reports for a parish in the UK. Hello again, good afternoon to you. We use a UK hymnal, Laudate. Although this is a Decani publication, we realize that some of the hymns were not handled by the Calamus subscription, that is correct, and had taken out a CCLI subscription as well. However, with One License and CCLI being online, we now realize some items we occasionally use from Laudate are not covered by One License or CCLI. Do you have any suggestions what steps I should take to pay our copyright dues on these items? That is another really, really good question, Peter. My recommendation, and this happens very rarely, but I know it happens enough. If you're not familiar, there are two kind of licensing entities. There's One License, which covers Catholic and mainline Protestant organizations. So those that lean more liturgical in nature, and then CCLI tends to lean more evangelical in nature. So with that, my recommendation is that if you're not finding the song on One License or on CCLI, there should still be copyright information at the bottom of the piece of music, or perhaps in an acknowledgement in a separate spot in the hymnal, right? So again, I mentioned earlier that sometimes the contact information is on like a different page, like in an acknowledgement section in the back of the hymnal. It is your responsibility to do your due diligence to contact that company. So for example, you can do a Google search. You can do you can reach out to whoever you procured the resource from. So perhaps you can reach out to Decani and you can say, hey, I see this song that's covered by the Brenna Cronin Publishing Company. I don't find them on CCLI. I don't find them on One License. Do you have contact information for them, right? So then you would write an email, or you would give a phone call to the Brenna Cronin Publishing Company, and then they would be more specific with you with how they could license those works. So sometimes we see that folks have a minimum. So for example, they're going to charge you 5 cents per copy that you want to make, but they have a $25 minimum. So most of the time you're just going to end up paying the 25 bucks, right? Other companies may say, yeah, go ahead, use it. Just thanks for asking. No problem. It's free, right? And then there also could be the opportunity there if you said, hey, I can't find you on One License. If they get enough of those requests, and you wouldn't believe, I mean, again, if you go to our member publisher page, we work with over 300 different publishing entities. There are folks that have joined us just because customers email them so often asking, hey, what the heck, can't find your stuff. And they don't want to license it themselves. I totally get it. I mean, that's why we're here. We're a licensing agency. So that's my best recommendation to you, Peter, is to see if you can get the copyright information. And then if you don't have their contact information, to do a Google search and to see how you can find it. Of course, anything in the public domain does not need to be reported. There's no royalties that are associated with that. And public domain is 70 years after the death of the author or the composer. John said, thanks for clarifying that the choir is just an extension of the congregation when using melody-only music. I'm glad that that was clear to you, John. Yeah, I mean, we get that question a lot. And I think it's important to acknowledge that like these folks, they would be in the congregation anyway, right? Like they're helping to participate in the active, conscious engagement, right, of everything. So if they're just using melody lines for music, no worries at all. Absolutely, absolutely, totally fine. All right, folks, we got about 6 minutes left, so I want to open it up to any other questions. I want to make sure that I can answer all of those before our time expires today. I hope so far that you've found this to be a helpful resource and a little bit different than our typical webinars. You won't see any live questions necessarily being like a chat like that on our new user webinar. So that's kind of why we wanted to offer this kind of different and special resource, so that way we can talk to each other a little bit more and learn from our peers. All right, Matt's question. I saw this question on a Facebook NPM group. Someone assumed that just because a song is in a GIA WLP hymnal, that it is covered for a reprint under One License. Not true, correct? GIA could have had an agreement to reprint the hymn in the hymnal, correct? Yes, Matthew, you are correct. So it is not true that just because it is in a GIA or WLP hymnal that it is automatically covered. So I wish I had a copy of one right next to me, but the library is in a different office. But if I was to open up a page, I'm sure, I mean, don't quote me, but like I'm sure 90-something% of that hymnal is going to be covered, right? But there are times when it's not. There are times when whoever that copyright company is, they permitted the use of the song in the hymnal, but they did not permit that use to transfer digitally over to one license. There are some agreements that GIA has where they kind of represent those songs, or that entity decided not to become a member publisher, or they just don't know to become a member publisher with us, right? So no, I mean, you'll find that when you're searching on the My Account report usage page, if you're going through Ritual Song 2, for example, and again, it would probably take me a while to find a number of something that's not covered. But if you're looking for song, 700 and whatever, and you get this little, you know what, here's a good idea. I'm going to pick this Taizé resource that I know only has like 20 pages in it. All right, so if I'm looking for song number 705 in this Taizé resource, I'm gonna get this message here that says, sorry, no results were found. So this is what you'll see if the song is not covered through the service. And then that gets back to Peter's question of you have to contact the individual entity to see how to secure permissions for that. So correct, not true that hymnal permissions transfer automatically to one license. Fantastic question, Matt, thank you. John's question, this may be out of your scope, but I make arrangements of hymns or choral pieces from time to time solely for our own use. What is the proper way to do that? Do I need to get official permission? Yeah, great question. As you know, and as you said, it's not within the scope of one license, but working in the industry, I have an answer for you. So just follow up with the publisher or the copyright holder of that specific piece. So if you are working with the arrangement, so that means that the text, isn't changing, right? You can get permission from the publisher. You can talk to the text author about it. You can talk to the arrangement author about it. You can kind of, figure out what your in is on that. I will say that there are plenty of authors and composers that just do not give those permissions. It's just not something that they are willing to do. We had an issue come up recently where somebody wanted to write different text to Christ Be Our Light, Bernadette Farrell. And the good thing is that before they created the new text to it, they sought permission from our colleagues at OCP, and they just said no. And that was the beginning and the end of that. So my recommendation is before you, put too much effort into something, to contact the publisher and see what their rules are about that. They may be strict, they may not be strict. That's kind of their call to make. But yes, I would say that you do need to get some type of official permission. And you can certainly within your letter or your email, if you want to give the scope of like, hey, this is just being used by, a congregation of 200 people on a Sunday, and it's a special dedication Sunday for us, and this song means a lot to us, and we wanted to write new text with it, or something like that, right? Maybe the publisher would be more willing, but again, that's their decision to make. But yes, you should seek permission on that. All right, my friends, we are at our time for today. I want to thank you so much for joining me for this call. I hope that it was informative to you. If you have feedback, if there's anything that we can be doing better, go ahead and send us over an email, info@onelicense.net, and I'm very happy to answer those. Thank you so much for being engaged and for asking great questions. We will host these call and response events again once a month. I offer them in 2 different time zones. So the call at 7 o'clock tonight will be totally different because the folks on the call will be totally different, right? So come back anytime. Thanks for keeping me on my toes and answering some great questions, asking some great questions, I should say. Thank you, Magali. Thank you, Matt. I personally will not be in Louisville for NPM. I have another commitment, but one license will be represented in Louisville. Yes. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate you. Appreciate everyone for being on the call today, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for all that you do. If no one has thanked you today, my friends, thank you for what you do to inspire congregational song in your communities. This work can be laborious. This work can be difficult. This work can be emotional. This work can be a lot of different things. And as someone who has a vibrant parish because of the effort that our music directors put in, I want you to feel thanked and to feel appreciated for everything that you do. So you have a great rest of your day. Send us more questions if you've got them, more feedback if you've got it, and you have a good one. Bye-bye.